I'm Andy Green, and this week we're talking about the pressure for success and fear of failure, because this is the Naked Man Podcast. I got married last year during the pandemic, but when the quarantine struck, my partner and I wondered whether we should postpone the wedding or even go through with it that year. Eventually, though, we realized we wanted to get married, even if our families couldn't be there, no matter how hard that was for all of us. But we didn't want to live on pause. We didn't want to be at the mercy of this pandemic any more than we already were. So we went forward with a private wedding attended by only 7 people, including ourselves. And we made it an event, thanks to our private chef, Wes Avila, our photographer and videographer at Legacy Union Photo, my sister Robin, and our dear friend and officiant, Elvis. But our clothes definitely helped. I got my suit from Suit Supply. It was one of my first in-store adventures that wasn't a grocery store since mid-March. I went for a light gray Havana jacket and Soho trousers. But I wanted to be bold with my tie, and none of the ties at Suit Supply fit my vision for, I guess, my wedding day garb. And my tailor, Michael, he gave me a recommendation, a friend's business of his, a bespoke Neapolitan suit company based out of Virginia called the Ten of Pentacles. I went online that afternoon and was immediately smitten by the designs, the artistry on display, and bought a rad mid-century modern geometric print tie that immediately became my favorite article of clothing that I own. When it came time to share photos and videos of the event with all the friends and family we weren't able to have in attendance for our special day, I connected with Ten of Pentacles on Instagram. And that's when the real flirting began. And I say flirting as a joke, but I really did have this instinct to talk to the man behind the fabric. I started to follow the company and I learned more about its brand and its founder, Marcel P. Ames, my guest for today's conversation. Marcel's story immediately inspired and spoke to me as an artist, as a human being. I'm going to simplify it now to give context for us, but I imagine we'll go deeper. Marcel is a former mental health counselor turned member of the Richmond Police Department who was unable to return to the force following complications with a concussion after the city withheld medical treatment. Around the same time, Marcel's father died and there was a foreclosure on their home. Weathering depression, suicidal ideation, and the vigors of physical therapy, what did Marcel do? He followed his heart, his art. He taught himself graphic design and how to sew. He picked up a pen and started to doodle his own company into existence, the Ten of Pentacles. Marcel has since shared his story as a motivational speaker, a speech I will share in the episode notes. It's great. But today, we're hoping to explore the overwhelming pressure for success and how that intersects with masculinity and the omnipresent fear of failure we both have and have already connected on. So enough of my voice. Marcel P. Ames, welcome to the Naked Man Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Andy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, yes. You're very welcome. Thank you. I mean, this is surreal and cool, which is like, I think how I want to live my life.
Yes, I think we should all live that way.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, so how did I do? On the story, I always feel sort of weird trying to put someone's life in a box when I know that is what you strive to break out from.
I think you summarize it better than I ever could.
I don't know about that.
I tell that story so many times. So it's hard to keep it concise you'll learn that about me too. Like that's sort of my nature. It's harder for me to simplify or, condense certain things when there's so many important details as a part of it. That's a sidebar. That's something that goes like going into the design process and thought process, and that mental exercise we sort of do with our careers and daily lives.
Yeah, the details and those sort of tangents that we go on. That's what I love to like. That's what a real conversation is. So let's go down those roads and follow that. For sure. I think I have the same thing. I mean, for some reason, I'm able to summarize other, like when it's not me or my idea, I can summarize that. When it's my idea, it's just, whoa, here we go. Yeah. There's like 18 paragraphs. The sentences are run on. I'm trying to tell 14 stories at once because I want everyone to love it, and that's impossible.
Yes.
So yeah, I know. I think that sounds like, judging by your face, you know what that feeling is.
I know exactly what that feeling is. Absolutely.
So I like to ask every guest to start us off, just to sort of ground us in this moment. How are you feeling in this moment right now?
It's a very interesting question. I'm present, a little lethargic, and maybe a little bit of anxious energy. Yeah.
Yeah, is that anxious energy for this, or is it sort of the business, the art brain working in the background at all times?
It's more the business brain. I am excited for this. Let's be.
I wasn't. Wasn't.
Oh no, yeah. No, but I was saying I am excited for this. So that does contribute to it. I think it's more so though that like in the back of your head you're like, oh shit, okay, what do I have to do? Wednesday I need to learn this. Like, oh shit, I haven't printed these things yet. All of the wheels are spinning, especially during this, this holiday season. So
yes,
my apologies for that.
Oh,
yes.
no. The wheels, believe me, I am doing my best to appear like I am completely here. And that's what the practice is. That's what this sort of is to keep me here with you, even though, I haven't responded to someone and I'm probably going to forget if I don't do it right now, like whatever it is. And that'll be okay. Because that guy will wait. Yeah, the world will wait because I think for me, the thought I was having as I was making my tie or tying my tie was like, oh, I don't think I've ever worn a tie that the person designed has seen me in it. I know you saw it online, but it just in person, it's like I was like, oh, I'm probably gonna screw up this tie. I gotta
No, it looks great. It's very surreal looking at this right now. I'm like, whoa, I remember that. I have one of these. Like, oh gosh, it wasn't that long ago, but I'm just like, wow,
this came from your brain. Isn't that the coolest thing?
So weird.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I guess whenever children happens for me, that feeling will feel all the time. Like, wait, that's
you're like, that's mine.
And I guess that's sort of what the artist is doing with every piece too. I always call my ideas children sometimes, or not
Very
always.
much.
I learned it in therapy because it was sort of like that's why I love all my ideas, and they hurt when they don't work. Do you have
They
that?
do hurt. And then you have to do the people under the stairs and you just shove them under the house somewhere and put a lock on the door. That idea is never getting out of here.
That is not a healthy way to do that. For sure. The people under the stairs is a great reference, though. I actually saw that for the first time last month. Great.
Really?
Yeah. A great lesser known Wes Craven.
Yeah. As well as the his rendition of Phantom of the Opera. Ooh. I feel like is underrated. A lot of people sleep on that one.
Ooh, I don't think I've seen that either.
And Robert Englund is actually in that. Yeah.
Well, then I already know that I made a mistake, and we need to be talking about horror movies right now. And we'll do it. I know you had a lot of Nosferatu going on.
There's a very good reason, yes, why my editorial this season is shot the way it is, and yes, very very into horror. So if we can. I'm very happy to go down that road as well. We can jump on that tangent too.
That'll be the spinoff. The spinoff of this conversation.
Yes,
horror is, I think, the getting out of the box, and the easiest way. Or for me, that's when those movies do that the most routinely. And so, and I know that that's sort of what you as an artist don't want to it is a Neapolitan brand and it is traditional, right? And has all these, it's baked in that, but I think you're trying to not be necessarily beholden to it at the same time, right? It's sort of balance. It's a balance.
Absolutely. It's a balance. It's like you said, it's sort of the base with us being a, Neapolitan brand and being very traditional. It's old school. You think like guys, it's like guys walking around Naples in their, 50s or something like that. Much more subtle type of thing. So having that as sort of the foundation, but also me being me and sort of injecting my DNA into that, and it being American, and having all of these very personal references and spirits to it, then it's looked at under a more contemporary lens. Being able to honor and keep tradition alive, but also being able to do your own interpretation of something and complement it in a way that works well for both, but feels more, I don't know, at least for me, feels more genuine and not so pretentious like luxury clothing can be. And a lot of, luxury brands, and, it's like, can we, how many, we're going to smoke Cuban cigars, sipping a, Negroni on the Riviera and blah, blah. It's like, okay, that shit is cool. I like that too. But like, most of us aren't necessarily doing that. I get the aspirational aspects behind it. But, with Ten of Pentacles, for me, it was like, we are very luxurious, and it's those subtle details you don't even think about or know of until you're very close up on them, or you just know about them, like who crow's foot stitching, on buttons and shanking buttons and little things like that. That I don't want to say insider because it sounds kind of douchey, but like menswear aficionados, that sounds kind of douchey too. But I'm gonna run with it. Those sorts of things that we see as being hallmarks of something that is luxurious, that is very well made. Where the fuck was I going with this?
Well, here,
pardon my language, by the way, too.
No. The language is great. That is. I will swear as well. And here's a fucking tangent for you. So like when you were talking about buttons, yes. I had this memory of it. Like as a kid, I was afraid of buttons. I didn't like, because I couldn't do them, or it was hard for me to do it. And like to button shirts and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, and it also, I think in this moment, I'm thinking it was also sort of the idea of, it felt like there was a masculine energy to it, or like I'm a man if I'm wearing a buttoned shirt, and mm-hmm. I wasn't a man, I was a kid, right. or something. It felt like pretending, and not in a way that was fun. I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm going, like, if this is therapy, that's, I think, where mm-hmm. I'm at. Cause mm-hmm. I just remember it was mostly because I'm afraid of failure, and I wasn't able to button buttons. So that was the main thing of like, oh, I'm bad at it. And by bad at it, meaning I wouldn't try because I didn't know how to do it. That's sort of what it is. That was me for like tying shoes, other things like that. Very sort of tentpole things for children that would sort of come easy. Those things did not come easy to me. It was sort of like, oh, I can't do it. I don't know.
That is very interesting. Huh.
Yeah, I don't know that. So I don't know where I went with that, but
how long did that last?
Weirdly, like, I think it sort of had whispers into my sort of lack of fashion sense later, where like I was wearing sweatpants beyond when I probably, it was okay to do so. Or, and I didn't really like jeans either, zippers. Like it was just sort of weird. I was just, but I think I want to say probably intermediate or like 4th or 6th grade is when that sort of was able to change. Mm-hmm. But I don't even know. I think I just wore t-shirts because that was comfortable. I didn't have to worry about it. And then either sweats or like whatever, what are other things? Oh, like khakis, like shorts and stuff like that. Cause I played sports. So sort of that was my thing. But it was just this like fear of not, I guess. Yeah. What's the, like, I don't know if it was because it was mostly because I didn't know how, but I don't know why I didn't even really try, or what was going to happen if I missed a button or whatever the like fear was. But I'm assuming you were the king of buttons.
I don't know. It made me think of I'd hang out with a cousin of mine when I was younger, and I remember we'd go to department stores as kids, and like, it would be walking around the store, like looking at stuff, and we made this game up of like who can collect the most buttons. You get like extra buttons on your clothing and the tags and all this stuff, and we would go around the racks and just like snatch buttons off. And we put them in our pocket, and we just have like all these buttons. And it was the most bizarre thing in the world. But I do like buttons. So maybe that's like, this is our past that, becomes a part of us, becomes sort of it's like getting a little thing injected into you and it just kind of flows through the bloodstream. But yes, I like buttons very much.
And that's like, it's kind of, yeah, it's interesting. It was like maybe one of the first instances of like a symbol of what you were going to become, or sort of like aware of the artistry in your brain. That's really cool. And I also, like, for me, it was like when I learned to tie a tie, when I learned to do all those different things, and it was no longer, I mean, I still sort of feel like the boy whenever I'm tying a tie. I still am like, oh, doesn't feel natural.
Yeah.
But, I worked at a bank, I didn't like the job, but what it did do was force me every day. I was wearing a tie and I fucking loved it. I really liked to, I was like, oh, looking good is fun. Like for some reason I always was afraid to do that. I guess I didn't want attention or didn't think I deserved to look good. I don't know. I didn't know we were going to get into that. Today, but yeah, here we go.
Bring it on.
Yeah, I guess I'm the one who needs therapy today, Marcel. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh my God. No, I haven't had therapy in a little while, so it's good. This is good. We're having some therapeutic conversations. What was I going to say regarding? Okay, like looking. We think about looking good, and we think about like what looks good, and I guess that more pertains to like status quo, like majority of people would consider to look good. And you think about how it's so subjective and how there are these things that govern as to what looks good and what does not look good, or what is cool and what's not cool. And something that one person might say looks like shit, and this, but if an authority figure or something of that nature designates it as being the cool thing. I mean, you look at a lot of clothing now, like, there's so much ebb and flow with regards to trend-driven clothing. And, us kind of going back and forth between that. Now we're in the large phase, so to speak. So prior to that, it was like skinny everything, skinny jeans, skinny suits, skinny ties, skinny blah, 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 blah. And, now things are bigger, or this sort of weird space we're in where, obviously streetwear has, changed the entire industry as a whole. But, people's interpretations of what looks good and what does, you see some crazy stuff sometimes, even for myself as a creative. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But I'm like, I guess that, you see more of that. And I was like, okay, I guess that's the thing. And so it's just always interesting, with when we strive to attain what is going to look good versus what we feel good in. And I think, people developing their wardrobes and that sort of thing, like, I guess you kind of have like your own personal reasons for, certain things, or, set of values. Do you want something that's sustainable and, is green, something that is, super high end or uses a certain caliber of materials or labor to achieve it? All of these little things that I guess determine what we feel is good. But, I guess I'm saying all of this to say I can relate to that especially as a younger person, and like wanting or not feeling like I deserve to look good, or, knowing what that was, being comfortable in that space. And I guess this kind of ties into sort of what, we wanted to discuss. We talk about like bravery and fear, and, really leaning into ourselves as individuals, and clothing sort of being this outlet to express those things and sort of take risks. And, at the end of the day, we can kind of take it off. And yeah, sorry, I'm like,
oh no, I loved it. I loved it. And I sort of, for me to boil that down, or what I was sort of thinking was that, yeah, I mean, there is really no necessarily universal definition of cool. But like, what is cool is always someone who is themselves and knows who them and is confident and doesn't give authenticity. Exactly. And I think for me, how that connects to that, I didn't feel like I could look good, was that I didn't know who I was either. I didn't know who I was supposed to be. I didn't fit in necessarily in any sort of, I didn't want to fit into a box either, but I also had no confidence of where I should go. And I just didn't know who I was. Right. And so I think that extended to my clothes. I did the bare minimum for very long because it felt like me not making a choice, and I think it also sort of was like, if I'm wearing sweatpants in high school, I'm clearly not like trying to make a statement at all, like, at least not a good one, or at least it didn't work. So yeah, I think I really was just sort of on the fence. I didn't really, I think it's because I'm talking to someone who's, designs clothes that I'm just like now making the connection between those different things. And it really was finding people, like my partner who's like, oh no, you look good in this thing. And like, I remember being in an improv class where they were like, don't wear loud shirts because you don't like, you're funny, not your shirt. Like people wear funny shirts if they don't have personality, basically, sort of. And to me, it was sort of like I wore them as badges of what I liked. Like that was me telling myself, because I didn't really want to say it. I didn't want to say that I love Dawson's Creek, but I wore a Dawson's Creek shirt at improv. Right. And that did lead to me having a podcast for 200 episodes with someone. So like, there's not a bad thing there, but I don't know. There's my ramble. We're trading rambles.
We're trading rambles back and forth. We gotta, there's so much. I think that's the beauty of conversation. The further you go, it's like walking through this forest, and then there are all these little sort of veiny paths that, lead to other places. And sometimes they come back to the main one, and sometimes you're in a fucking stream somewhere, but like
your clothes are all wet.
Yeah.
Your cell phone's been ruined and you're lost. And yeah, it's sort of, I'm like that, where it's like, ooh, something shiny or like interesting. Let's poke at that. That's where the adventure is, I think.
It is. What do you think? We think about, I guess like that coming of age and learning and understanding ourselves, and us starting to begin to figure out who we are. And with regards to like clothing, if you're a freaking kid, like you don't have money to spend on clothing, or it's an investment, not just a monetary investment, but like, clothing and putting together an outfit, purchasing the outfit. That's a mental investment into something. If it looks good, then you're like, oh shit, well, how do I keep this up? Well, what am I going to do next? And that whole thing. So, as kids, if you don't have money, or your parents don't have money, like my parents didn't buy me like designer clothing, my stuff was like hand me down, the shit out of Target, until I was maybe like a senior in high school. And even then it was like one piece, I couldn't buy that. But again, as you said, we were still figuring ourselves out. Who was I fucking 17 years old? That didn't begin until going away to college. So I think for a lot of people, like, you go away, you're leaving home, you're thrown all of these new responsibilities, including being responsible for yourself, and get to experience different personalities and things. And all of these scenarios start to impact you as an individual, as a young adult. And you start to find things. Maybe I'm not this extension of my parents. I'm actually, I am who I am. These are things that raised me, but maybe that's not necessarily who I am. And so that's a lot of people's journey. And I think clothing definitely ties into that, this path of self-discovery in our lives.
Did you have a moment of self-discovery with clothes? Or is it more of, I guess you did in terms of designing them, certainly. But do you know what I mean? Like I guess, because I actually did come up with a moment maybe where I was like, oh, like the first time I tried to like be weird, or try to like express myself. And I'll share. I'll share it if you don't have one that immediately comes to mind.
No, share it. Let's go. Yeah.
Because because when you said senior in high school, I was like, oh, okay. I remember I went to a thrift store with a friend, and we I got this really weird 70s suit jacket, like yellow, like car salesman thing. Yeah. And then I got a straw hat from like J.C. Penney or something, but like it was like kind of a nice hat, not like a farmer straw hat, but like something. It was still weird. And then I think what the worst part was that I wore a Wedding Crashers shirt under it, because that was like what was cool. But now that movie is very problematic, and always was. It's a funny movie, but yeah. So I remember that. That's the part of the wardrobe I would take back. But I forget what my pants were. But that was the That was my first day of school senior year, like my coming out party. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Woo.
And actually, yeah, senior year, I did sort of like, I guess I actually made more friends and was more social and was more in this sort of, I actually participated in school, you know, in terms beyond what the classes, you know.
Sure.
So that was the symbolic thing.
Huh. And it just comes naturally when you start or attempt to walk down that path of being authentic to you.
Right. And it's not like everyone was like, well, that's an incredible outfit. Cause I don't think anyone said anything like that, but it was just sort of like, oh, like no one really cares. Or it's also like, this kind of feels fun. And I also feel slightly outside of myself too. And it's like, who I'm playing. And now, you know, I'm not just Andy, shy Andy.
Yeah.
You know, I'm senior year Andy, new beginning. I can be whoever the fuck I want to be. And now I sort of realize that is me almost every day. I'm like, okay, sometimes to an annoying extent where it's like, oh, I should probably stay in my lane slightly, but I'm just, it's like the forest. Every tree I want to climb, they all look like they all have different views, you know?
Yeah. You got to experience them all.
Yeah. It sounds like I have ADD, but I don't. But that's what it feels like when we're talking about these forest things of like, oh, distracted by shiny objects sort of idea. But it's more curiosity for me. Like, it's just, I want to know everything, but I sort of know a little bit about something. I don't know. Well, no one knows anything. That's, I guess, my main.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, do you have any moment like that? Or did you have a moment, actually, if we can take it to the art part of like when you had a design that was like, oh, okay, I am a designer now and not just full of shit, you know, or like,
I think with the Monarch jacket that I did, which is, I think that was the first piece I did where I felt like a designer. I guess I could say that with some of the shirts too. I mean, it was literally just like with me sketching out and making these like shirt collars and, you know, the bodices for the patterns and all of these elements. It's just like butcher's paper every fucking where, and scissors and pencils, pens, and everything. So, but I guess with garments, as opposed to like, you know, the graphic illustration things that I do with the accessories, you know, that is just like, I still didn't feel quite like, I'm like, I don't know if I'd be like, you know, respected yet. Like I need to do some clothing. I need to do like garments, and doing that piece, which was, you know, an original idea and was, you know, again, very personal for me in every aspect of it. And it, you know, being a garment and having to go through the, like a pattern grading process and all, you know, all these different steps that go on behind the scenes when you're making things. And I was like, oh, you know, I'm legit, and showing other designers that I knew, and they're like, oh, you know, you're doing your own tech packs. This looks good. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like I'm starting to move away from the whole imposter syndrome thing, which it's a big like, you know, hot take, I think these days, like, you know, imposter syndrome and people not feeling comfortable in certain spaces and being themselves, and people not feeling comfortable being themselves, and you know, excelling in things or being recognized for doing well in something and achieving something and being able to celebrate that. I think there's so many barriers that hinder us from being able to stop to celebrate ourselves, or, you know, because if you do too much, then it's like, you know, maybe that guy's like narcissistic, or, you know, he's like a narcissist if you're talking about yourself too much, which can be annoying. But I think just having a confidence in your abilities and finding comfort in that, and, you know, having a sense of pride that, you know, you've worked so hard, worked and done things that no one on this planet has seen you do. Like, this is just you in a room doing these things to take yourself to this next level. And then you have these moments where I'm like, you know, do I belong here? Am I good enough? Am I blah, blah, blah? And I mean, I know for me, there were certain instances where I was like, I'm good enough. I'm good. Like, you know, at this point, like, I might even say in my head, like, I'm the shit. Like, people don't know it yet. You know, not that many people know it yet, or I haven't got there. I'm like, fuck this. I'm just like, fuck, you know, because I'll give you examples. Like, with the brand that you mentioned earlier, in the podcast. Like I think I've thrown some stuff up, and I debated even talking about those things because I'm like, it's not going to get me anywhere. I might have a few people who are like, oh gosh, that's, like it sucks, because it does. Like you get that kind of support from it, but it's like, okay, like I don't want to detract from the brand, but going after low frequency things like that. But, having those moments, having to look at that as a creative, when I'm talking about like the suit supply thing, like, and just being like, okay, cool. All right. Thanks. I appreciate it. Or the Virgil Abloh thing with the Off-White, those kinds of experience where like, you're reaching out to try to work with people or, collab or, get some advice or do blah, 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 blah. And then it's like, then you see a portion or interpretation of your design show up somewhere else and the same themes and everything else. And this is like, well, this guy is the fucking like golden child of the fashion industry and, doing shit with Kanye West and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, but he, and he stole some of this stuff, but I'm like, I think I'm good. I think I'm good. Like, okay, maybe, I do fucking belong here because this jackass just, took my shit and, now they have a new logo for the brand or instances like that. Or I'm like, but I put these trousers out 2 years ago and it's the same exact fabric design and it's even named after me. Like, having those sorts, like that was a suit supply thing, like having those sorts of moments and just being like, clearly I'm fucking good because, all these things are, or I'll even say just more like moments like even watching peers and I'll have designed something and I'll kind of sit on it. And I'll liken this feeling to that of like when you were in a classroom as a kid in elementary school and you knew the answer to whatever the question the teacher was asking, but you were scared to raise your hand. And then some other kid raises their hand and says the answer. And you're like, I fucking knew it. It's the exact same feeling of creating something. And, then like a few months later, you see like, somebody, and they put out the same thing and it's just like, and obviously like, yeah, I mean, it's just like, oh shit, like that's crazy. Cause I thought of that too, but it's just like, okay, I'm on the right path because people that I respect in this industry that, I follow, whatever, if they're doing these things, I'd already planned to do this. Like I just didn't have the ability to put it out, when I thought of it. I'm on the right track. And I guess it's that sort of form of validation. I could take any of those scenarios and, into a negative space, and I have before, but being able to look at it as just a compliment. Okay, it's validation. I am supposed to be here. I belong here. I'm doing the right things. I'm there. It just takes time and being prepared and consistency and being persistent in what I'm doing. Not necessarily that I am horrible at what I'm doing. I'm a bad person. I suck as an artist, or all of these negative things that we play in our heads as we're pursuing these things that we're scared of, or, or have aspired to do. And we get in there, we're like, oh shit, I don't think I'm that good. I don't know, whatever. And it's like, but when you have those validating moments, it's like, I am good enough. I belong here. And it having those moments, oddly, it makes it easier to continue to move forward in our things to be able to reflect on when you have those periods of feeling like an imposter. That was a really long tangent.
But I loved every syllable. And you do belong here. And obviously, yeah, that is sort of like evidence, right? Like it's not how you want the validation to come, certainly. But like to see evidence of your work and other people's and that it's being stolen is, that is the highest compliment, but also like kind of a little bit of a dagger, of course. But like that journey that you described of like, using it to be motivating is really inspiring. And also like, that's how because you are on the right path. I am on the right path too. And I really connected with that too. Cause I think I've always, and it was also sort of in your speech where you talked about sort of being a passive dreamer versus an active dreamer. And that idea of like, I had the idea, but I didn't speak up or I didn't do it. And I think I felt like that most of my life, where I was just sort of the fear of failure stopped me from trying, sort of. And I also it's in building this case that I'm always behind, right? Like I've always had that feeling where I'm just sort of like, slower on the developmental curve of like just being a human being. I think we all feel that of like, oh, I'm not an adult yet. Oh, I don't have this yet.
Oh,
but
yeah.
but this was especially in terms of art stuff. Cause I sort of came to art and creative and writing late because I had no idea that was where my path was, even though it sort of was clear in hindsight. But
Yes.
one of those things, that's just the journey that I'm on. And that's me. That's what makes all the stuff that I'm picking it up will make me unique. And even though it's really hard to look in the mirror and think that I or that I am unique, but I am. We all are.
You are. Yeah.
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 And I was going to ask you, what was the turning point from like passive to active dreamer? And maybe if you wanted to give some context about that sort of, because I thought that was one of the coolest things. And that was when I was like, oh, I really, really want to talk to Marcel, because I've always just felt like this passive dreamer, and like to be an active one, to turn your dreams into a reality is like that.
Yeah. And there was another, I guess I'll
please do
piggyback off of what you said, but
yeah,
with regards to, that fear of failure. And with me, I think the thing that, obviously the thing that pushed me through that was everything was gone. Everything had been taken, to the certain point. I'd never felt like I'd done anything career-wise that was of my own origin. It was influence from other people, suggestions from other people pleasing, appeasing others, wanting some sort of security, whatever that, however we interpret that, a home, steady paycheck, blah, blah, blah. And so when everything had kind of been stripped from me, this career that like I wasn't that much of a fan of, but I planned on doing other things with, whatever else, like that gets taken away. I'm not the same person anymore, as I have this head injury, dad's dead, house is gone, where am I going to live? Like all of this shit goes out of the fucking window in a matter of months. And in that period of bereavement and being numb, where, normally somebody be like, oh, I want you to be a designer or do whatever else. And you're just like, well, you're fucking crazy. I don't know I love clothing. Feel like I know more than the average person about clothing, but like, how the hell am I going to do that? Instead of questioning those things, it was like there wasn't this other person in my head being like, you can't do this. This is absurd. How are you going to get the money to do this? How are you you don't have the abilities, blah, blah, blah. That normal chat that was in there, it was like, it was just blank in my head. You just numb from pain and loss. And it sucked to be in that place, but that was sort of the catalyst for, having this journey. Like, I'm like, okay, what can I do that doesn't like give me a freaking migraine or isn't triggering to me about death or whatever else? I'm like, okay, I'll just like sketch on a table or something. I don't know. I need an outlet. And it just sort of blossomed from there, with some encouragement and just kind of being like, fuck it. Like, everything's going anyway. If this shit doesn't work out, I've been through worse, if if it does. And even in starting at first, my first instinct was like, well, I'll just do this to have enough to create a portfolio to be able to work for someone else. Not, in the beginning, like I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go like, gung ho and with this brand with 10 of Pentacles. And, it was like, oh, maybe I'll just work for someone else first. There was a little, of that in there. And as it went on, and of course, everybody being like, well, we can't hire you. You don't have experience. You can do an internship with us if you move to New York, but you won't get paid, all these things. And I'm like, I guess, universe, this means you're telling me something here, and you start to figure shit out.
Yeah, make the experience for yourself, right? Like that's sort of what I'm learning now too. Because I have the same thing where it's like, I didn't have any qualifications necessarily. The evidence of what I do doesn't really exist, even though I've been working pretty much on and off for my whole life of all these just sort of creative things, but it doesn't translate to a resume or to something that is easily marketable or sellable, right? And so I'm just like, oh, I just have to do the thing that I want to do. and stop waiting for permission to do it, right? And that's sort of the same thing that you did, right? You're like, okay, I can't be an intern. I deserve more than that, which is great. And you do. And then, created it.
Yeah. It's a lot harder when we're sort of waiting for that sign or waiting for permission to do things. Oh, gosh, what was that analogy I gave you? And I don't know if you want me to get to that or not about fear.
Oh, yes. That you can get into that for sure. I mean, do you want me to? I have it here actually, if you want it. But
if you want to read it out.
Yeah. So it is so easy to think of all the reasons why something can't work when fear is present, and so difficult to reframe ourselves to think of why it will work. There's always risk in anything we do. We're just more accepting of some things than others, i.e., risk of being injured in car accidents. Yet we take transportation every single day. Pursuing your dreams is a lot like that. Nothing is exempt from risk. But if you don't gas the car up and get on the road, you'll always be stuck in the same place. Yeah.
It's like that. It's like that. It's like that. I'm like, shit. I'm like, did I say that shit?
You did say that shit.
I guess so. I mean, yeah, it's because there's always going to be a risk. I was working at the police department and thought we signed up for a 25-year, pension, retirement, all those things. And it's supposed to be the most secure. You're working for the city government. This is the most secure job on the planet, aside from maybe, if you don't make it back home. But for all intents and purposes, it's a steady paycheck. And, you think that's stable, but then you don't anticipate getting a concussion and, negligent doctors and all these other things and shit getting thrown out of whack. And, all of a sudden this secure career path is no more. And you're not the same person you are. So there, was that really secure to begin with? So if I make it out of this thing, if we make it out of this traumatic event, am I going to go back to this other safe thing? Or am I going to go this way and maybe try something a little different or try to do something I really, really wanted to do for a long time? And it's hard to do when you are trying to maintain a living and, do all the, you got to go to the grocery store, do laundry and clean. There's so many things that, we as people have to do. And it's hard to chase that. So it's like you kind of either some shit happens to you or, you just have to make a choice to go after it with an understanding that it feels risky because, you may have no idea what you're doing or, there's still a lot to learn. There's a, big learning curve, all these things. But, there's also this big reward. Like, what if I'm able to at least live a decent life doing something that I love or I feel fulfilled by? Yeah, I could fail at it, but, I could also, get knocked on my head working at the bank or something. What the fuck? Well, so I'm not getting any younger. Time flies. It doesn't even feel like it's November right now. It's, things move so rapidly. You get caught up in the day to day and, look up and it's been like 3-4 months. And, it's one of those things where you're like floating in a dream. So I guess the, active or, lucid dreaming is just like, is taking that time to really commit to whatever it is that, is in your heart, understanding, whether you succeed at it or not, that, at least you are allowing yourself to do this for you. Right. We're only on this planet, but for so long, one may even have, many existential questions of, why are we here? What is our purpose? But, I think that's a feeling that's in here, and we have to allow ourselves the space to feel that, especially when it's something we're on this path to discovery, and you have to be able to kind of give that to yourself. Because nothing is sacred, nothing is promised, nothing is, shit can happen for you, shit can happen to you, and that's life. So
yeah, I mean, you were saying, the notion of stability, and I was sort of thinking, is there such a thing, or like you said, we can just get, hurt at the bank, or like happened at your job, or a car accident, anything. I don't think there's no such thing, but we all strive for that sort of mythical being of, or the mythical ideal of security. And that, I think, cows us a lot of times into shying us away from like maybe what we really want, or to try something. But then if you turn it around and be like, well, there is no such thing as that either. It kind of, it helps. I had like so many things, and now I'm where you were at, where I was like,
it's like brain freeze.
Yeah, no, I was just, but that's the glory of editing.
Yes. And I, fuck, what was I saying? Now this is like a disease.
It's infectious. It's infectious. I think we're just being so empathetic of the other person that we don't want the other person to feel bad for losing their place. So we're both doing it back and forth to each other. Like, we're both clueless. Good. Not that clueless isn't the right word. That's too harsh.
I can feel a little clueless sometimes. So like totally.
Hell of a film.
Yes.
I think it connects to the 10 of Pentacles. Like the name itself is actually sort of about stability and long-term success. And so it's clearly like it's even baked in your company and your dream was this sort of mythical stability. But at the same time, I feel like the tarot is more about the long-term success and focusing on like future generations and doing things that are good for the future and yourself. And that will sort of just trickle down. Is that, that's like based on my card. Is that what, the card. Yeah.
For that particular card, I think you nailed it. That's the ethos of it. It's, about, I think it was also for me about like being able to sort of enjoy the fruits of one's labor, being able to sit back and gaze upon what you've built, whether that be, this actual things, a house, a car, material things that we think of, or whether that be you reflecting on you, that you are this plentiful field and, family structure and all of these things, like, that can be interpreted in many ways, not necessarily in the material world, but, at the end of the day, it was just like, you work so hard. We work so hard. We, have this precious life and only with so much time. And so, it's nice and we deserve to be able to reflect and enjoy these things that we've worked hard to have, to do, to be, to have our family, dinner with our families or spend intimate time with people, whatever that is or looks like, being able to enjoy that. And clothing was always something that I enjoyed. And, many people around me enjoyed, and it was a part of my personal growth in figuring out who I was, specifically wardrobe wise and style wise, and, what that meant to me, to, developing those things and certain tastes and things and understanding why something is, like, geez, this is expensive. Well, why is it this expensive? How are these things made? What is the process? What's the history behind it? Having all these nuances and things that give them value. And so it's like, you work hard and want to, have these things. Now let's enjoy them, live in them, be present in them.
I think a couple of times you've mentioned sort of slowing down and reflection and that as like to sort of figure out what you need to do or what you want to do or who you are. And I think that connects to also sort of the anxiety about time that we have, because you've also mentioned a couple of times about how we have such a short amount of time on this planet. And that to me is always, I think, where my base fear is. It's like, feels like I'm wasting time or I don't have enough time. So how can I possibly slow down when I need to just keep going? But then I think I'm getting now that I'm on meds for anxiety, I think it's gotten a lot easier to notice when I'm the hamster in the wheel and to slow down and be like, wait, what do I actually want to do in this moment?
Yes.
And so I've been working on doing that. And that is really, and I think sometimes it's really easy to get back in the wheel. but I think it spills over into everything, like of trying to like for what, like I'm going to watch for, movie tonight. I'm not going to do whatever, like the top 10 Netflix. I'm going to think about what do I actually want to watch or need right now? Like, what am I working on? What, do I need to laugh? Do I want to laugh, or do I want to see a shitty movie or a great movie, or, whatever it is. And I think that's the same thing for whatever creative process, or even like, oh, actually, I really do want to go to the grocery store right now. I think that will help, rather than, oh, I have to do the grocery store right now. Yeah.
Well, it's not a chore. It's a conscious choice.
Yes.
For something that is, going to make you feel better. But that's hard with anxiety. How long have you been dealing with anxiety?
I think my whole life, but I sort of, I always, until fairly recently. I mean, I think when I started therapy, which was like, I want to say 4 years ago, was when I finally was like admitted that I had more than just a manageable amount, or like that I felt like therapy was for other people, not me. And that was the same way I felt about medication. That was the same way. So it's like, it's been this slowly breaking down that wall of like, oh, helping myself is a good thing. Oh yeah.
Right.
Like asking for help and exploring these things. So I think I always felt I was a nervous kid. I sweat a lot. And those were all manifestations of anxiety, but I sort of just thought I was weird rather than seeing that was anxiety. But like, I've always had social anxieties or different things like that. I think from as long as you
can remember.
Yeah.
But you decided to do something, or when I say do, like, be treated for that, or kind of find some sort of solution to be able to cope with your anxiety. That was more in recent years, when you felt like, okay, like what do you think changed for you, where you finally, like, as someone who didn't, you weren't with like taking meds or going to see a therapist and all those things, like, why do you think you felt that way? And then what changed for you? Did something happen, or was it just like you woke up one day and you were like, hey, you know what? I think I should try therapy, or I should.
Right. I think it's a convolution of, or a lot of different things, but I think mainly the main thing was learning. I learned a lot more about my anxiety when I met my partner, my future wife, and noticing her anxiety and seeing it was sort of more obvious than mine, but realizing that I was better at hiding it, and I've been hiding it from myself, or sort of being in denial about it. And so I learned through her. And then also when I'm like, oh, I love this woman, and I'm also like not getting any younger, like I want to be the best version of myself for her, for our future. So that was what finally was like, okay, I'm like an adult now. Let's like actually take responsibility and try and be better. And also once I like went, and I also like knew that I would like therapy. It was never a thing of like not liking it. It's so Andy, it's so talking about myself and being curious about myself. It's like, it's the most, it's not fun necessarily, but like it sometimes is the most invigorating part of my week, or the most necessary, just to have someone listen to you for an hour, even though, and what it has also helped me do is find people that are better at doing that in my regular life. Like, I'm feeling like I'm having that with you right now. And I hope the same way back.
Likewise,
and because it's like, oh, this is how people listen. And because I feel like my whole life, I felt like I had to talk really fast or get through stuff because I had a very limited window of people's attention. And that's why I always feel like I'm not making sense, or, I still do it in therapy all the time. At the end of a long sentence, I'm like, did that make sense? Where did I go? And we've had that moment 4 times today. That's just sort of my base level. And it's mostly like, oh, no one could understand me anyway. Right.
Yes.
So I don't know if that necessarily answered your question. I think I've always been a person, well, at least I think the moment was going into college. I last second didn't go to University of Washington, which is like the home college basically. And I would have roomed with like a friend from high school and would have known like 50 people from high school. The last second I went to Ithaca College in upstate New York, where I didn't know anybody. And that to me was the moment where I was like, okay, no, I need to challenge myself and get out of my comfort zone. Yeah. And it was terrifying every single time. But like when I would travel across Europe, country, all these adventures, they became they're always hard every single time, but they're always the best things that I've ever done. And I learn about myself. And that was my way of, I think, learning and sort of not conquering the anxiety because it's always there, but sort of figuring out how to play with it, I guess, or to live
working
with
through it.
Yeah. Or even like the anxiety is sort of, it's definitely fuels a lot of my creativity too, So, and I imagine, is that the same for you?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like, anxiety can be sort of a catalyst for getting things done. It's like that flight or fight response.
Yeah.
And, or, some people who like work great under a deadline because there's a deadline, you have this fire under your ass to get things done and you're able to do it. Whereas if you have, there's sort of gray areas and, when things need to be accomplished or whatever, we like, and I'll do this plenty of times, like just procrastinate. You're like, I'll get to it later. I'll get to it here and there. So I think that anxiety can help. It helps me sometimes, especially under like pressure, under pressure for a lot of things. I guess it's sort of what you make it. Like my therapist sort of framed it in a way where she's like, you just have to sort of like with grief, anxiety is just going to sort of exist. And you have to be okay with existing in it and understand that there's an ebb and flow with anxiety. It goes up, it goes down, and eventually it's going to go down. And, acknowledging it when it happens and being able to sit in that sort of discomfort and nervous energy, acknowledging for what it is, but also knowing, okay, probably in like, 20, maybe 30 minutes, I'll feel back to normal. This is just what I'm feeling in this moment. And so being able to sort of work through it, work through it or work with it. What was that? There's a Batman animated movie where she talks about pain, where she smacks herself with a stick in the head and bleeds. And it's like, Bruce, we work through the pain. We don't work
Mask of Phantasm? I don't know. That's like the best animated movie. I'm not sure though. Yeah.
Don't even get me started and pull out my Batman animated series, all of them. And I think it was either like Batman Year One or one of those where like multiple. It was the one where they had like multiple stories. I think like there were kids and they had like multiple stories or versions of Batman. But I like that particular one. Like that always stood out to me. She's like, we worked through the pain. I'm like, oh, we worked. What is that? What is that like? Like.
Yeah, well, because it's like the pain, there's always going to be new pain. The pain never goes away, especially when it's grief and then anxiety is a type of pain, I think, basically a pain of living, a pain of uncertainty. That's what it is. It's like, I don't know what's going to happen and none of us do. But yeah, I think I was going to ask you in terms of creating, like I've actually realized that sometimes I do better. Like when I'm actually writing, it's sort of just music or nothing. But when I'm sort of ideating or like sort of things are percolating, like it feels like my water is boiling. It almost feels like that. It's actually the more things that are going on, the better. Like it's like this multitasking thing where I could be doing the dishes or making coffee, writing out notes on my laptop. The music is playing and maybe even like a baseball on mute is happening on the TV. Yeah. And that it actually feels great. And like I could even be texting people if like something comes up because it's sort of like everything is happening. I'm just sort of addressing them as it hits me. Does either of those things sound familiar to you?
Yeah, it's the music or no music, like that sort of thing in the process of getting work done, 1,000%. But, and actually, I would agree with, that sort of before period. Like if I need to like knock out financials or something like that in a spreadsheet, then I'm probably not going to have music on because I'm like, I need to concentrate. But when you are in that sort of process before the execution process, that ideation process, I think I totally relate with that. And just the fact that there's a movement, there's motion in thought and environment. It's this sort of constant flow back and forth of energy. Maybe that's like, like the ADD in us or something like that. You can jump off the fly and let me address these things as they come. And there's a comfort in that, but also having that movement and that motion and being able to work your way through all of these things, I think is when those moments hit that then you can execute them later, right? Like that's in that stage where I'm like, I'm kind of feeling something. It's like those moments I'll have with certain designs where like being in that scenario of like, there's music on here or the podcast here or blah, 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 all of these different things going on. And then I'm like, oh, I need a pen. And I'm sketching some shit out like, on a piece of paper. And then I'm like, okay, let me go take a walk for a second. I'm gonna come back. You come back, and these maybe even ritualistic practices that we have, which is on another tangent, is another reason I think I was attracted to like classic menswear more so than like streetwear and those things. Was the ritualistic aspects of it, having to button up your fly or all of these things having different functions, and there's this ritualistic nature in it. And I think it's sort of the same with creativity. For our minds to be active, sometimes we need that motion, that movement, these things going on to stumble upon those ideas.
Yeah. And I think, and it's even all that movement or energy, I think sort of distracts the negative voice too.
Yes.
there's less room for it. Like when I'm hiking, and I love to hike, and that's sort of my exercise. That's all I sort of do to exercise except for softball. And it's sort of like some days I don't write anything and I'm just sort of in a zone. Mm-hmm. And other times I'm like, oh, there's just, whatever is bothering me comes up. And it's sort of just like, oh, I collect them, write them down on my phone, and then I just keep going. Yeah. But I'm not sitting there. It's when I'm sitting down and being still that the negative voice is winning more often. So I think it is that sort of the nervous energy. You can use that against it in a way of sort of like, okay, I need to do this. I need to do this. Yes. I don't have time to be like, oh, I'm going to burn the pancakes, like whatever, the pancakes will be like, or whatever it is that I'm making will be however they are when I get to them,
So you don't have like a designated time that you sit down and you're like, I'm going to write Tuesday from 2 to 5 p.m. is when I write things, or it's just when it comes to you, when you have an idea, you sit down and make time to get that done.
I've always gotten into trouble when I've tried to force the issue and felt like I needed to do it and especially now, because I'm realizing that I want to host a podcast and do all these things that aren't necessarily me writing my scripts. Right. And then sometimes that voice would be like, what are you doing? You're not doing the thing that you love to do. And it's like, wait, no, I love to do this too, and I'm writing the intro. There's writing and all that stuff it's all part of the same thing.
Of course.
So for me, I think it's sort of what presses on my brain and when do I need to do it? And I'm sort of ideating or, sort of crossing off things, doing all the banal producer kind of stuff or editing or social media, whatever, emails. I love writing emails, but to me that like emails is an art.
You're the only person on the planet.
Well, not like business emails, but like I really do like corresponding through email. Like that's why I write these like really long emails that no one reads. I'm just like, that's how I learned to communicate actually. Like I think that and we mentioned before on like we were recording Ames, like that was how I communicated. So that's my comfort zone and why I think I can do 8 different windows at once is because I was talking to 8 different people at the same time.
Yeah. We had Napster in one window, porn in the other one, and like Legend of Zelda in another one.
That's true. Which I mean,
it's the generation.
It's probably fucked us over, but also made us be able to be like superhuman in some way too. We're becoming the computer. I don't know.
Yeah. We're the Napster age, man. It's like
the Napster age.
We were part of that Napster age, and we were around when people were still using floppy disks and playing Frogger, with like a green screen to, now us having this like incredible technology and we're on video calls and all of these things. And we were there to, we had like typing classes in school, and you had this thing Ames where, all you had to do is be able to type quickly and you could like talk to all your friends all the time. And, there was so many things I think centered around, childhood and growing up that sort of ingrain the technology side of things into us and how we interact, having a MySpace and, instant messenger and chat rooms and all of these things where it's like, you can probably type with your eyes closed if you wanted to. Like, it sounds crazy, but for us, that it's like, yeah, we could. You've been using these things for so long and so accustomed to them. It's second nature.
Yeah, it's like anything. If I think about it, I can't. But if I'm
Right.
just going, yeah, I can. Yeah, I do that. I mean, that's sort of similar to writing and creating too. I think it's like,
Yes.
I just let it go, and then once I'm starting to think about, oh wait, what's happening? Then it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
But it's or it's like I'm overthinking. I got in the way of what the fingers were doing.
Yes.
Just follow the body. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting because I think all those things sort of trained us to be a little bit. Well, it trained us into who we are, but also sort of better able to handle and equip some of the stuff that's going on. It's interesting to be a previous generation or also the one after us where they sort of just grew up with having all the tech. And I do really like having sort of grown up with it in this way, but it's also, I feel like it gives me a little bit more awareness, but it's also, and just as scary, I think, or it's scary kind of too, to like see those changes. Cause like now I am the old man, right? Like that's what it feels like. But I'm sure even like 20-year-olds feel that way when they see like their 12-year-old cousin with, whatever it is. So that's just what nature,
They pop out of the womb knowing how to like, log on to Instagram and, watch YouTube. Like it's incredible how that transfers.
And they're doing Zoom in the womb now.
Yeah. It's like bloop, 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 bloop.
Connecting to other unborn children around the world.
Yeah.
That's a short story I'm never gonna write. But
oh gosh. Yeah. This feels like an 80s action movie. It's like what's gonna be the future.
I sort of promised at the beginning that we would delve into a little bit of masculinity.
Sure. Yes.
And I was wondering. Yeah, and I was gonna ask you, how do you think that plays into the drive for success, that fear of failure, and that need for stability that we've been sort of talking about?
I think those things are sort of ingrained in us and just a part of, societal standards and, human standards of things. We have these sort of milestones and moments that are sort of there. And, this sort of like, ethereal clock on the wall that is ticking, and we're married by this age or, engaged by this age, married by this age, kids by this age, getting ready to retire, like this sort of thing that was of our parents more so, but those times have changed and information is different and plentiful. COVID has changed. There's so many things that have changed this one-dimensional sort of landscape that was sort of ingrained in us. And so there's this like innate need to be providers as men or be leaders, be confident, to, make a certain amount of money. You don't make a certain amount of money, you can't even freaking date because you can't afford to go on a date, to meet people. You can't hang out or do things. So I have to have something that is stable, that is solid to just function in society. And that's for anyone, but I think as men, it's like if you, and I don't know if it's maybe like because I guess if I had to compare it, with like male privilege, like, we have a privilege as men to leave our homes and go for a jog at, 2:00 in the morning in the dark. And, as long as we're running in a decent neighborhood or whatever, it's like, okay. Or, go out on dates and not have to think about like, what is going to be my exit strategy here if things happen and all those things. I don't know if it's, some of that, like in terms of male privilege, it's like, okay, nobody's going to discriminate you because you're a guy or whatever these, possible things that could happen to you if you were a woman, you don't have to deal with that. Therefore, nobody's like, your pay is, higher than mine or, all of these shitty things that, it should be equal and it isn't. It's like, okay, you don't have to deal with that. So you should be, you should be A-okay, like you're able to have the career you want and have these things and you should have these things. And I don't know. I guess maybe, there's just a pressure there, like I said, to provide, to perform, to feel adequate, I don't know.
I agree with everything you said. And I think it also now extends to everyone, right? I think whoever you are, we feel this pressure to succeed now because we've gotten to be closer to equal, like that everyone is sort of expected to be incredible at everything and make every money. And also like the bar to like be able to afford anything is so much higher. So you have to succeed at everything or in anything. But I was also, when you mentioned male privilege, I then harkened back to the beginning of this conversation. I was talking about what I didn't wear. Right. And I had a lot more leniency being the dude in sweats, or the dude in shorts. Like if I'm in high school, middle school, intermediate, and I'm a woman trying to do that, like there's a lot more expectation or pressure to dress up way. Right. And so like, my privilege was like that story, women listening are like, what the fuck? Like, I just realized like, and I just realized that right now.
No. But that's a part of the journey as men and us learning these things and being okay to be like, oh shit, I just totally said something that, I realized like that's a part of it. And being able to stop and acknowledge those things or have those conversations and be able to learn and be better as men, not so much, not be trash. Like a lot of men are trash, but
let's not be trash.
Let's be slightly less than trash, please. Bare minimum. Let's no.
There is enough trash on this world.
There's enough trash on this world and the ocean. Let's be like recycling bins. Let's be like compost bins.
Oh, yes.
Gentlemen. Yeah, let's strive.
Compost.
Let's strive for it to be compost bins. We can't be perfect, but let's strive, please. Yes.
Yeah, I like that as our message as we sort of go off into the sunset, a very masculine idea. But I am stoked that we had this conversation. I'm stoked. Like I could go on forever, I think.
I could go. Yeah, you could go on forever.
And I sort of was just wondering on the subject of friendship. And I think for me, this is a new relationship that we're having right now. This is the first time we've ever talked really in person, or certainly in person, and ever seen each other. And I'm just wondering, for you, what in a friendship like deems it worth nurturing, and how can I be the best friend, collaborator, whatever it is that you need from me for you?
Likewise. I think with friendships, I just value like people being genuine and, authentic to themselves, which is, this is a theme we definitely talked about today, being supportive and understanding. And I would hope they would expect those things of me too. I'll say as an entrepreneur, it's been a lot harder for me in maintaining friendships. And because I'll say like I could be bad even prior to being an entrepreneur where like, I might go MIA for a little bit, or it might take me a while to respond to people, or just kind of be like, I'm a very introverted person. So sometimes I will take quiet space to sort of recharge myself or whatever else. I think therapy has helped with that, because I think part of that was being able to cope with certain things. And I think that's another run on like with men and mental health and needing a place to be able to speak about the things that bother us or discover things about ourselves or be able to cope with things and work through them, and having a safe space to do that. And, but it also being like this should no longer be stigmatized thing, that being able to check on yourself, take your temperature, and being able to speak with someone candidly, I think is important, but has always been looked at as, weakness or instability and all those things. But I think it's, taken a turn for the better these days. We've been through this crazy fucking pandemic. Everybody needs therapy, after that shit. Like, the world needs therapy. No longer reserve for certain things. So we need that. So I'm saying that, like, it was harder for me, especially in that period of, like, when I started the brand, that 2014 to hell, even 2019 or whatever, where there was so much going on and so many things that I juggle. It's still a struggle for me, but I think basically what I said, I think people understanding that and us knowing that everyone's situation is different. Everyone's life is different. I think people forget that sometimes, especially in our age group. As we get older, people become married or they have kids, and it's easier for them to relate to people with kids because you have the same schedule and the same issues and same things. But we're all different. Everyone's day may not look like what your day is, and I think it's important for us to just kind of be understanding of people and know, like, even if I don't know the entire situation, maybe someone is going through something or just has a lot going on. But I think true friendships. I have people who are close to me. It might be 3-4 months since I've spoken to them, but in that 5th month we speak, and it's like, we're picking up where we left off. Nothing has ever happened. I think there's always a, mutual love and respect and understanding of each other. And there's no clock.
I love that. I think understanding is a huge through line for me too. And that,
yes. What would
I will be understand. I mean, and I think we were both understanding through this process, because this was
we both had some things going on. Yeah.
But and I think it actually works for me too. Like that sort of, I think I run hot and cold sometimes in terms of communication. It depends on what is pressing on the brain. Right. And like, we had this thing scheduled for maybe September we were trying to do. And then it didn't happen, and that was fine, because I had a whole month adventure that I went on, and I didn't have space, so it worked out. I know you were very apologetic, but it honestly was like, this is when we were supposed to do it.
Yeah.
And I will strive to have that same attitude and that awareness of that. Yeah.
Awareness.
Don't operate on my schedule. And also, I think it's also the lack of, it goes back to pressure for me. Like, I don't like the pressure of having to do anything with someone at a specific time necessarily, or like, it feels like we haven't done anything, we have to do something this month or whatever it is. It's sort of like, it'll happen, not necessarily naturally, but like, we're going to see each other. And I think I have the same relationship with a lot of people where it's like, whenever we finally have that conversation or that hangout, it'll be great. And it's nice to have people that understand that, like, our lives, we're all trying to chase these dreams, right? Or these ambitions or whatever the hell we're trying to do. Yes. And that doesn't always mean we can't be available always.
Yes.
And so, I understand. This has been so fun and
thank you so much.
And thank you so much for going on this journey with me.
Thank you,
Marcel. Thanks for walking into the forest. I'm very grateful.
I'm very grateful too. It's much better than winding up like Hansel and Gretel. We went through the forest and it's nice to have some, good conversation and sort of break out of. And this is why, podcasts like these, like yours, are so important and are great, to get people to pause and think outside of themselves and engage and listen and learn and stop the usual sort of rat race to check out. And we were able to, express ourselves and have these sort of vulnerable conversations. And I'm sure, there are plenty more to be had. There's so much to talk about, I think, in, vulnerability alone, especially as men and as people in general, as we pursue our careers and our dreams and, all of these things that are so important to us. You're vulnerable in a lot of those moments, but it's all about how we work through that. And so thank you for having me. I was a part of this space, this sacred space with, your listeners and yourself, giving me a platform to, talk about me and
your buttons.
Yeah. And buttons. Yeah. Buttons and Batman and horror movies. We have to do a horror movie one.
Okay, we'll do one.
Yeah.
We don't have to wait till Halloween. We'll talk about it.
Halloween is all
always.
Year. Yes. Halloween is Grinch night is all year round.
I agree. Thank you so much. And you're welcome. Yeah. I had a cunning thing to say and now it is lost, but let's see. Oh, shit. Vulnerable spaces. You sort of mentioned that that's what this show is. It's me practicing it and trying to put myself to that. Like all this was me sending a lifeline to a stranger, right? But the only connection we had was that you made this tie and it's fucking cool. And I wanted to talk to who made it. It's curiosity. And to me now I hesitate to say friends. I don't want to put a label on it, but like
friends.
We can talk about anything now. That's great. And
of
also
course.
I want to go to Virginia and say hi. Yes. And you can come to LA and like that.
Yes, I'd love to. Never been to LA. So.
Oh, well, there you go. We'll roll out the red carpet. Classic scenario that never happens but it will, because we're all going to wear your clothes on the red carpet coming soon. Yeah, we go.
Roll it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Marcel, thanks so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Andy.
I appreciate you too. And I appreciate everyone listening to us. We'll talk soon, everyone. This episode made me so happy listening to it back, hearing Marcel and I trade rambles as we wandered through the forest, getting to know each other, because isn't that what it's all about? And in so doing, realizing how similar our creative brains work, down to even how we speak. I needed this conversation when I had it and when I edited it. And now I'm going to follow Marcel's lead and repeat what he said during our conversation. I am supposed to be here. I belong here. I'm doing the right things. I'm there. It just takes time. I'm good enough. Say it with me if you want. I'm good enough. Thanks again, Marcel, for joining me and trusting me, and to you all for listening. I'm so grateful. You can find Marcel's soundtrack and all other Naked Man soundtracks on the Naked Man Spotify page. If you like what I'm doing, if you like what you're hearing, do me a favor. Please tell someone else about the podcast. Rate and subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tell everyone. It would mean a lot to me. And if you'd like to join our community, follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Naked Man Pod, and don't hesitate to reach out to us at nakedmanpod@gmail.com. If you have any thoughts and feelings you'd like to share, call and leave a message at the Naked Man phone line at 747-231-7120. Next time on the Naked Man podcast, a return to the monologues. But in the meantime, as my dad always says, be sweet. This episode of the Naked Man podcast was conceived by Andy Green in collaboration with Marcel P. Ames. The Naked Man is a podcast hosted, created, and produced by me, Andy Green. All music was composed by Robert Panico, and all graphics were created by Christopher Miles.